Hello everyone, Kate here, back here with part 2 of this Constitution Act from 1867. So I'm going to get right into it. Number 50. Every House of Commons shall continue for 5 years from the day of the return of the writs for choosing the House, subject to be sooner dissolved by the Governor General, and no longer. Number 51. The number of members from the House of Commons and his representation of the provinces therein shall, on the completion of each decennial census, shall be readjusted by such authority in such matter, and from such time to time as Parliament of Canada provides from time to time, subject and according to the following rules. Rule number 1. There shall be assigned to each of the provinces a number of members equal to the number obtained by dividing the population of the province by the electoral quotient and rounding up any factorial remainder to 1. Rule number 2. If the number of members assigned to a province If the number of members assigned to a province by the application of Rule 1 and Section 5(1)(a) is less than the total number assigned to that province on the date of coming into force of the Constitution Act 1985 representation, there shall be added a number of members so assigned to such number of members will result in the province having the same number of members as were assigned on that date. After the application of Rules 1 and 2 and Section 5(1)(a), there shall be respect of each province that meets the conditions set out in Rule 4 be added, if necessary. A number of members such that, on the completion of readjustment, the number obtained by dividing the number of members assigned to that province by the total number of members assigned to all provinces is as close as possible to, without being below, the number obtained by dividing the population of the province by the total population of all the provinces. Rule 3. Applies to a province if, on the completion of the preceding readjustment, the number obtained by dividing the number of members assigned to that province by the total number of members assigned to all the provinces was equal to or greater than the number obtained by dividing the population of that province by the total population of all the provinces. The population of each province being its population as at July 1st of the year of the decennial census that preceded the readjustment according to the estimates prepared for the purpose of that readjustment. 5. Unless the context indicates otherwise, in these rules a population of a province is the estimate of its population as at July 1st of the year of most recent decennial census. 6. In these rules, electoral quotient means, in relation to the readjustment following the completion of the 2011 decennial census and in relation to the readjustment following the completion of any subsequent decennial census, the number obtained by multiplying the electoral quotient that was applied in the preceding readjustment by the number that is average of the numbers obtained by the dividing the population of each province by the population of the province as it just a flavor of the population of the province as at July 1st of the year preceding decennial censuses, according to the estimates prepared for the purpose and preceding readjustment, and rounding up any factorial remainder of the multiplication up to 1. For the purpose of the rules in subsection 1, there is required to be prepared an estimate of the population of Canada of each province of July 1st, 2001 and July 1st, 2011, and each the following of 2011 decennial census in which the census is taken at July 1st of that year, by such authority in such matter, and from such time as the Parliament of Canada provides from time to time. 51. Notwithstanding anything in this Act, province shall always be entitled to a number of members in the House of Commons not less than the number of senators representing such province. Number 52. The number of members of the House of Commons may from time to time increased by the Parliament of Canada, provided by the proportionate representation of the provinces prescribed by this Act is not hereby disturbed. Number 53. Bills for appropriating any part of the public revenue for imposing any tax or impost shall originate in the House of Commons. Number 54. It shall not be lawful for the House of Commons to adopt or pass any vote, resolution, address, or bill for the appropriation of any part of the public revenue or of any tax or impost to any purpose that have not been first recommended to that of the House of Message of the Governor General in the session of which such vote, resolution, address, or bill is proposed. 55. Where a bill passed by the House of Parliament is presented to the Governor General for the Queen's assent, he shall declare, according to his assertion, but subject to the provisions of the Act and to her Majesty's instructions, either that he assents thereto in the Queen's name, or that he withholds the Queen's assent, or that he reserves the bill for the signification of the Queen's pleasure. Number 56. Where the Governor General assents to a bill in the Queen's name, he shall be by the first convenient opportunity send an authentic copy of the Act to one of Her Majesty's principal Secretaries of State. And if the Queen in Council within 2 years of receipt thereof by the Secretary of State thinks it fit to diswallow the Act, such diswallowance with a certificate of Secretary of the State of the day of which the Act was received by him, being signified by the Governor General, by speech or message to each of the Houses of Parliament, or by proclamation, shall annul from the Act from and this day of such signification. Number 57. A bill reserved for the signification of the Queen's pleasure shall not have any force unless and until within 2 years from the day on which it was presented to the Governor General for the Queen's assent. The Governor General signifies by a speech or message to each of the House of Parliament or by proclamation that it has received the assent of the Queen in Council. An entry for every such speech, message, or proclamation shall be made in the journal of each House, and a duplicate thereof duly assented shall be delivered to the proper office to be kept among the records of Canada. 58. For each province there shall be an officer styled the Lieutenant Governor appointed by the Governor General in Council by instrument under the Great Seal of Canada. 59. A Lieutenant Governor shall hold office during the pleasure of the Governor General, while any Lieutenant Governor appointed after the commencement of the first session of the Parliament of Canada shall not be removable within 5 years from his appointment, except for a cause assigned, which shall be communicated to him in writing within 1 month after the order of his removal is made, and shall be communicated by message to the Senate and to the House of Commons within 1 week hereafter, if the Parliament is then sitting, if not then within 1 week after the commencement of the next session of the Parliament. 60. The salaries of the Lieutenant Governors shall be fixed and provided by the Parliament of Canada. Number 61. Every Lieutenant Governor shall, before assuming the duties of his office, make and subscribe before the Governor General or some person authorized by him, or oaths of allegiance and office similar to those taken by the Governor General. Number 62. The provisions of this Act referring to the Lieutenant Governor extend and apply to the Lieutenant Governor for the time being of each province, or other the Chief Executive Officer or Administrator for the time being, carrying on the government of the province by whatever title he is designated. Number 63. The Executive Council of Ontario and of Quebec shall be composed of such persons as the Lieutenant Governor from time to time thinks fit, and in the first instance of the following officers, namely, the Attorney General, the Secretary and Registrar of the Province, the Treasurer of the Province, the Commissioner of Crown Lands, and the Commissioner of Agriculture and Public Works in Quebec, the Speaker of the Legislative Council, and the Solicitor General. Number 64. The Constitution of the Executive Authority of each of the provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick shall, subject to the provisions of this Act, continue as it exists at the Union until altered under the authority of this Act. Number 65. All powers, authorities, and functions under any Act of Parliament of Great Britain, or of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, or of the legislature of Upper Canada, Lower Canada, or Canada, were or are before or at the Union vested in or exercisable by the respective governors or lieutenant governors of those provinces, and the advice with the advice or the advice of consent with those respective executive councils thereof, or in conjunction with those councils, or with any number of members thereof, or by those governors or lieutenant governors individually, shall, as far as the same are capable of being exercised after the Union in relation to the government of Ontario and Quebec respectively, and be vested in and shall may be exercised by the government exercised by the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario and Quebec respectively, with the advice or the advice of the consent or of or in conjunction with their respective executive councils, and the members thereof by the Lieutenant Governor individually, as the case requires, subject nevertheless, except with respect to such an exist under the Acts of Parliament of Great Britain, or of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, to be abolished or altered by the respective legislatures of Quebec and Ontario. Number 66. The revisions of this Act referring to the Lieutenant Governor in Council shall be constructed as referring to the Lieutenant Governor of the province by acting and with the advice of the Executive Council thereof. The Governor General in Council may from time to time appoint an administrator to execute the office and function of the Lieutenant Governor during his absence, illness, or any other inability, unless and until the executive governor of any province otherwise directs with respect to that province. The seats of government with the provinces shall be as follows, namely, of Ontario, the City of Toronto, of Quebec, the City of Quebec, of Nova Scotia, the City of Halifax, New Brunswick, the City of Fredericton. 69. There shall be a legislature for Ontario consisting of the Lieutenant Governor, and of one House styled the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. 70. The Legislative Assembly of Ontario shall be composed of 82 members, to be elected to represent the 82 electoral districts set forth in the first schedule to this Act. 71. There shall be a legislature for Quebec consisting of the Lieutenant Governor of two houses, styled the Legislative Council of Quebec and the Legislative Assembly of Quebec. 72. The Legislative Council of Quebec shall be composed of 24 members, to be appointed by the Lieutenant Governor in the Queen's name, by instrument under the Great Seal of Quebec, one being appointed to represent each of the 24 electoral divisions of Lower Canada, and this Act referring to, and each holding office in the term of his life, unless the Legislature of Quebec otherwise provides under the provisions of this Act. Number 73. The qualifications of the Legislative Councillors of Quebec shall be the same as those of the Senators for Quebec. Number 74. The place of a Legislative Councillor of Quebec shall become vacant in the cases in which the place of Senator becomes vacant. Number 75. When a vacancy happens in the Legislative Council of Quebec, a resignation, death, or otherwise, the Lieutenant Governor in the Queen's name, by instruction or instructment under the Great Seal of Quebec, shall appoint a fit and qualified person to fill the vacancy. Number 76. If any question arises representing the qualification of the Legislative Council of Quebec, or vacancy in the Legislative Council of Quebec, the same shall be heard and determined by the Legislative Council. Number 77. The Lieutenant Governor may from time to time be, by instrument under the Great Seal of Quebec, appoint a member of the Legislative Council of Quebec to be Speaker thereof, and may remove him or appoint another in his stead. Number 78. Until the Legislature of Quebec otherwise provides, the presence of at least 10 members of the Legislative Council, including the Speaker, shall be necessary to constitute a meeting for the exercise of his powers. Number 79. Questions arising in the Legislative Council of Quebec shall be decided by a majority of voices, and the Speaker shall in all cases have a vote, and when the voices are equal, the decision shall be deemed to be in the negative. Oh boy. Number 80. The Legislative Assembly of Quebec shall be composed of 65 members, to be elected to represent the 65 electoral divisions or districts of Lower Canada, and this Act referred to, subject to alteration thereof by the Legislature of Quebec, provided that it shall not be lawful to present the Lieutenant Governor of Quebec for any assent for a bill and sent any bill for altering the limits of any of the electoral divisions or districts mentioned in the second schedule of this Act, unless the second and third readings of such bills shall have been passed in the Legislative Assembly with the concurrence of the majority of the members representing all the electoral divisions or districts, and the assent shall not be given to such bill unless an address had been presented by the Legislative Assembly to the Lieutenant Governor, stating that it has been passed. That is, stating that it has been so passed. Number 82. The Lieutenant Governor of Ontario and of Quebec shall from time to time, in the Queen's name, by instrument under the great seal of the province, summon and call together the Legislative Assembly of the province. Number 83. Until the Legislature of Ontario or of Quebec otherwise provides a person accepting or holding in Ontario or in Quebec of any office, commission, or employment, permanent or temporary, at the nomination of the Lieutenant Governor to which an annual salary or any fee, allowance, emolument, or profit of any kind or amount whatever from the province is attached, shall not be eligible as a member of the Legislative Assembly of the respective province, nor shall it sit or vote as such. But nothing in this section shall make it ineligible in any person being a member of the Executive Council of the respective province, or holding any of the following offices, that is to say, the offices of the Attorney General, Secretary and Registrar of the Province, Treasurer of the Province, Commissioner of Crown Lands, and Commissioner of Agriculture and Public Works, and in Quebec Solicitor General, or shall disqualify him to sit or vote in the House for which he is elected, provided he is elected while holding such office. Number 84. Until the legislatures of Ontario and Quebec respectively for otherwise provide, all laws which that the Union are in force, those in those provinces are respectively relative to the following matters, any of them mainly: the qualification and disqualification of persons to be elected or to sit or vote as members of the Assembly of Canada, the qualifications or disqualifications of votes, the oaths to be taken by voters, the returning officers, their powers and duties, the proceedings at elections, the periods during which such elections may be continued, and the trial of controverted elections and the proceedings into thereof, the vacating of the seats of members and the issuing of and execution of new writs in case of seats vacated otherwise that by dissolution, shall respectively apply to elections of members to serve in the respective legislative assemblies of Ontario and Quebec, provided that until the legislature of Ontario otherwise provides any election for a member of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario for the District of Algoma, in addition to the persons qualified by the law of the Province of Canada to vote, every male British subject aged 21 years or upwards, being a householder, shall have a vote. Number 85. Every Legislative Assembly of Ontario and every Legislative Assembly of Quebec shall continue for 4 years from the day of the return of the writs for choosing the same subject, nevertheless, to either the Legislative Assembly of Ontario or the Legislative Assembly of Quebec, being sooner dissolved by the Lieutenant Governor of the province and no longer. Number 86. There shall be a session of the Legislature of Ontario and of that of Quebec at least once every year, so that 12 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of the legislature in each province in one session and its first sitting in the next session. 87. The following provisions of this Act respecting the House of Commons of Canada shall extend and apply to the Legislative Assemblies of Ontario and Quebec, that is to say, the provisions relating to the election of a Speaker originally and on vacancies, the duties of the Speaker, the absence of the Speaker, the quorum, and the mode of voting, and the provisions are here reenacted and made applicable in terms to each such legislative assembly. 88. The Constitution of the Legislature of each provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick shall, to subject to the provisions of this Act, continue as it exists at the Union until altered under the authority of this Act. Alright guys, that's as far as I can go. At least for now. I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Like, subscribe, and I'll leave people on the description and along with this Act down in the description below. Have a nice day. Goodbye.